Okay, so I'm going to pick up in the Glass Castle and looking at your reading calendar. This would be, so where I'm starting is the Friday assignment where it says 8:28. So last Friday, you were supposed to read pages 16 to 21 after we pulled up. So I'm starting at after we pulled up. So if you want to move there, in my book, it's page 35, but I think on the actual PDF version, it would be page like 21 or so. Okay. Let me download the attendance because I always forget to do that. Show participants. By the way, guys, while I'm doing this, go ahead and try to turn in the Microsoft Teams work from yesterday if you didn't. I know some of you guys were having problems with that. And again, if it still gives you problems, do what you did yesterday. Email the assignment to me with a screenshot. If you did email me the assignment yesterday with a screenshot, try turning it in today just to see if it lets you. Apparently, it was kind of an across-the-board problem with Fulton County. There were other teachers that I talked to that said that they also had problems with kids turning things in on MS Teams. So give it a try today just to see if it works. Okay, so page 21. After we pulled up stakes in San Francisco, we headed for the Mojave Desert near the Eagle Mountains. Mom and Dad stopped, near the Eagle Mountain, Mom made Dad stop the car. She'd seen a tree on the side of the road that had caught her fancy. It wasn't just any tree. It was an ancient Joshua tree. It stood in a crease of land where the desert ended and the mountain began, forming a wind tunnel. From the time the Joshua tree was a tiny sapling, it had been beaten down by the whipping wind that rather than trying to grow skyward, it had grown in the direction that the wind pushed it. It existed now in a permanent state of wind-blownness, leaning over so far that it seemed ready to topple, although in fact its roots held it firmly in place. I thought the Joshua tree was ugly. It looked scraggly and freakish, permanently stuck in its twisted, tortured position, and it made me think of how some adults tell you not to make weird faces because your features could freeze. Mom, however, thought it was one of the most beautiful trees she had ever seen. She told us she had to paint it. While she was setting out her easel, Dad drove up the road to see what was ahead. He found a scattering of parched little houses, trailers settling into the sand, and shacks with rusty tin roofs. It was called Midland. One of the little houses had a for rent sign. What the hell, Dad said. This place is as good as any other. The house we rented had been built by a mining company. It was white with 2 rooms and a sway-backed roof. There were no trees, and the desert sand ran right up to the back door. At night, you could hear coyotes howling. When we first got to Midland, those coyotes kept me awake, and as I lay in bed, I'd hear other sounds. Gila monsters rustling in the underbrush, moths knocking against the screens, and the creosote crackling in the wind. One night, when the lights were out and I could see a sliver of moon through the window, I heard the slithering noise on the floor. I think there's something under the bed, I said to Lori. It's merely a figment of your overly active imagination, Lori said. She talked like a grown-up when she was annoyed. I tried to be brave, but I heard something. In the moonlight, I thought I saw it move. Something's there, I whispered. Go to sleep, Lori said. Holding my pillow over my head for protection, I ran into the living room where Dad was reading. What's up, mountain goat? He asked. He called me that because I never fell down when we were climbing mountains. Sure-footed as a mountain goat, he'd always say. Nothing, probably, I said. I just think maybe I saw something in the bedroom. Dad raised his eyebrows. But it was probably just a figment of my overly active imagination? Did you get a good look at it? He asked. Not really. You must have seen it. Was it a big old hairy son of a bitch with the damnedest looking teeth and claws? That's it. And did it have pointed ears and evil eyes with fire in them? And did it stare at you all wicked like? He asked. Yes, you've seen it too? Better believe I have. It's that old ornery bastard demon. Dad said he'd been chasing Demon for years. By now, Dad said, that old demon had figured out that he had better not mess with Rex Walls. But if that stinky son of a gun thought he was going to terrorize Rex Walls' little girl, it had, by God, got another thing coming. Go fetch my hunting knife, Dad said. I got Dad his knife with the carved bone handle and the blade of blue German steel and and he gave me a pipe wrench, and we went looking for it. We looked all around the house, under the table, and the dark corners of the closets, in the toolbox, even outside in the trash cans. Come here, you sorry-ass old demon, Dad called out in the desert night. Come out and show your butt-ugly face, you yelly-bellied monster. Yeah, come on, you old mean demon, I said, waving the pipe wrench in the air. We're not scared of you. There was only the sound of the coyotes in the distance. This is just like that chicken shit demon, Dad said. He sat down on the front step and lit up a cigarette and told me a story about the time the demon was terrorizing an entire town, and Dad fought it off in hand-to-hand combat, biting its ears and sticking his fingers in its eyes. Old Demon was terrified because that was the first time it had met anyone who wasn't afraid of it. Damn old demon didn't know what to think, Dad said, shaking his head with a chuckle. That was the thing to remember about monsters, Dad said. They love to frighten people, but the minute you stare them down, they turn tail and run. All you have to do, Mountain Goat, is show old demon that you're not afraid. Not much grew around Midland other than the Joshua tree, cacti, and the scrubby little creosote bushes that Dad said were some of the oldest plants on the planet. The great-granddaddy creosote bushes were thousands of years old. When it rained, they let off a disgusting, musty smell so animals wouldn't eat them. Only 4 inches of rain fell year-round in Midland, about the same in the other northern Sahara, and water for humans came in on trains once a day in special containers. The only animals that could survive around Midland were lipless, scaly creatures such as Gila monsters and scorpions, and people like us. A month after we moved to Midland, Juju got bitten by a rattlesnake and died. We buried him near the Joshua tree. It was practically the only time I ever saw Brian cry, but we had plenty of cats to keep us company. Too many, in fact. We had rescued lots of cats since we tossed Quixote out the window, and most of them had gone and had kittens, and it got to the point where we had to get rid of some of them. We didn't have many neighbors to give them to, so Dad put them in a burlap sack and drove to a pond made by a mining company to a cool equipment. I watched him load the back of the car with bobbing, mewling bags. It doesn't seem right, I told Mom. We rescued them and now we're going to kill them? We gave them a little extra time on the planet, Mom said. They should be grateful for that. Dad finally got a job in the gypsum mine, digging out white rocks that were ground into powder, used in drywall and plaster of Paris. When he came home, he'd cover the white gypsum powder, and sometimes we'd play ghost and he'd chase us. He also brought back sacks of gypsum, and Mom mixed it with water to make Felis de Mayo sculptures from a rubber cast she ordered through the mail. It grieved Mom that the mine was destroying so much white rock. She said it was real marble and deserved a better fate than that. By making her sculptures, she was at least immortalizing some of it. Mom was pregnant. Everyone hoped it would be a boy so Brian would have someone to play with other than me. When it got time for Mom to give birth, Dad's plan was for us to move to Blythe, 20 miles south, which was a big town and had 2 movie theaters and 2 state prisons. In the meantime, Mom devoted herself to her art. She spent all day working on oil paintings, watercolors, charcoal drawings, pen and ink sketches, clay and wire sculptures, silk screens, and wood blocks. She didn't have any particular style. Some of her paintings were what she called primitive. Some were impressionistic and abstract. Some were realistic. I don't want to be pigeonholed, she liked to say. Mom was also a writer and was always typing away on novels, short stories, plays, poetry, fables, and children's books, which she illustrated herself. Mom's writing was very creative. So was her spelling. She needed a proofreader, and when Lori was just 7 years old, she would go over to Mom's manuscripts, checking for errors. While we were in Midland, Mom painted dozens of variations and studies of Joshua Tree. We'd go with her, and she'd give us art lessons. One time, I saw a tiny Joshua Tree sapling growing not too far from the old tree. I wanted to dig it up and replant it near our house. I told Mom that I would protect it from the wind and water it every day so it could grow nice and tall and straight. Mom frowned at me. You'd be destroying what makes it special, she said. It's the Joshua Tree's struggle that gives it its beauty. Okay, so that should have been a huge hint to you guys. The Joshua Tree itself, it's a symbol. All right, so what's the difference between a symbol and a metaphor? A symbol is a concrete object that stands for an abstract idea, whereas a metaphor is a concept that stands for another concept. So the title of this book is The Glass Castle, and the Glass Castle is an idea that Rex Walls has about creating a perfect utopia for his family, a utopia that is away from everything else and that is fully self-sufficient and doesn't require being hooked into the grid. The Joshua Tree is a symbol. in that it is an object that stands for human struggle. So that last line of that chapter says, Mom frowned at me. You'd be destroying what makes it special, she said. It's the Joshua tree's struggle that gives it its beauty. Remember at the very beginning of this memoir, her mom was talking about the fact that Lori, who's our narrator, is constantly trying to make things easier, whereas her mom says it's actually the struggle that makes you who you are. It's what gives you character. I heard that line growing up over and over again. Like my family's been through a lot. And so like the idea of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger and provides you with character, it's a pretty common construct. Here's the debate. As remember, there's always a debate, right? So here's the debate. The debate is, in this book, we see an example of someone who is doing what you guys talked about for the American dream. What makes you an American? It's freedom, living life freely. So Rex Walls and his wife are living life freely off the grid, and they're bringing their kids along with them. And they're trying to teach their kids that this type of radical freedom is actually a really good character building thing. But along the way, their children suffer, right? Their children, they lose animals. They have to, witness animal cruelty. They are hurt, like physically hurt, and then like kind of mentally neglected. So when we talk about the idea of radical freedom, just like your idea of what it means to be an American versus my idea of what it means to be an American versus your idea of what is freedom versus my idea of what is freedom, all of those things going back and forth, that debate exists. There is no dictum, there is no law, there is no great construct that exists that tells us you have to think this way. And if there were, the very basis of being an American would rebel against that idea. So the tree is definitely a metaphor for Lori and growing up and building character, right? And like the struggle is what makes it beautiful. But could you also extend that symbolism to being the Joshua tree as a symbol for America itself? Could you argue that the Joshua tree and the way that it is twisted in the wind and it's constantly moving and adapting and changing, and as it does that, it struggles and grows and changes into something that could be considered beautiful by some people and ugly by others? Could that also be a symbol of America and American freedom and how messy and beautiful it is? Could be. Could be. Okay. I'm going to stop reading for right there, and I'm going to stop the recording. Hang on. All right. Wait. I know how to do this. Stop recording. Yes, stop recording.